Yeah, that's what I just said. I'm trying to get my laptop. I remember this one.
Everybody here, I like today. Makes me more like this on a regular basis. I'm not sure.
I know.
She working?
Yeah.
Is it? That's an old shirt. Okay, it's old shirt.
I mean, the new ones haven't started.
Exactly. And you got your feet up too on top of that. So you get as much as you can, huh?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the Highland Park City Council in-person and virtual workshop meeting scheduled for today, Monday, June 2nd at 6 p.m. Please call the roll.
Councilman Ashafi,
Here.
Councilwoman Martin,
Here.
Councilwoman Manica,
Here.
Council Pro Tem Robinson,
Present.
Council President Thomas.
Testing. I am hopeful that today will be the first of a number of meetings on the modification of ordinances. This is completely in the purview of the legislative body for the city. And I think that this is an excellent opportunity for this council to hang their hat on making necessary changes to ordinances during our tenure. The body, city council, is actually directly representative of the population of the city of Highland Park. It is 60% women, 40% homeowners. We have a significant blue collar population. We have a significant population in the service sector. We have a significant population that are senior citizens. We have a significant population that are urban professionals, and the city council in this day represents the complete demographic of the city. So any modifications that this body would make to ordinances would reflect those of us who are sitting here right now. So I think we have a very unique opportunity in the year and a half that we have left to modify the ordinances. And I will be willing to host a series of workshops specifically on ordinance modification. And I believe this will be the first such workshop, because from this, we'll be able to take these documents back and discuss them with citizens, continue to work with the legal department, as well as Mr. Burgess and Mr. Clyburn. So this is a exceptionally unique opportunity for us to do something that we can hang our hats on. We have 2 agenda items tonight. That is the ordinance amendments for graffiti and the non-owner occupied residential property registration and inspection. These items fall under community and economic development. And so I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Clyburn.
Good evening. Good evening, residents, council. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna just give a brief introduction and I'm gonna turn it over to Attorney Bosnick. We find in code enforcement, and you know what's going on with all the builders and the graffiti, that we need to strengthen our graffiti ordinance. So Attorney Bosnick has done some research and pulled this graffiti ordinance to discuss with the council at your purview. Like Council President said, you take back, talk to your support, your constituents, and see what they want to do and how they want to add things. But I just want to point out one of the biggest issues to me with the graffiti is, if we strengthen our graffiti ordinance, one, is more punishable. It's a bigger punishment to the people that's doing the graffiti, but it also forces the property owners to do something with their buildings, because what we're noticing is that it's the vacant buildings that's getting tagged the most. So if we strengthen our fines, that may put a little bit of fire under them to do something with their properties. So this is a draft from Attorney Bosnick, so questions can be directed towards her.
Okay, thank you, Director
Is this it right
Clyburn.
here, Carly?
No, it's in your packet.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that I got that right here. Okay.
The ordinances that were provided to you were pulled from the City of Hamtramck's code. They've done graffiti enforcement for a number of years. The Highland Park Code does not have anything specifically with respect to graffiti. They have a malicious destruction of property code section, which indicates that a person shall not destroy, injure, or any manner deface any real or personal property. So technically, graffiti could be prosecuted under malicious destruction of property if it's considered to be defacing. But the ordinances that are just to start the conversation, we pulled them from the Hamtramck Code. They have graffiti in two different sections. Section 130.027 is under their code under nuisances. And then the code section 132.030 is in the section offenses against property. So they deal a lot more specifically with graffiti. So they were adopted quite a while ago, I believe, right? I think 1980. So they've been on the books for quite a period of time. For a period of time, we did represent Hamtramck, and I was prosecuting some of these graffiti cases where the building owners would get citations, and they would come in. They would be responsible for keeping their properties maintained. So it's been a number of years since I've been in Hamtramck, but I know at the time that these matters were enforced. So you could deal with graffiti any number of ways. These are a couple different ways Hamtramck has gone about it. And then again, as I indicated, you've got the malicious destruction of property or code section that it could currently be enforced under. So it's just something I wanted to give to Director Clyburn and just sort of start the conversation on this. I know this is something that's been talked about for quite a while, at least among my office and the director's office.
Can someone read it?
Which one? The
Is this one?
there's two. There's the one section that is provided in section 132.030, which is in the Hamtramck Code under offenses against property. It states it shall be unlawful for any person without authorization of the public authority having supervision of the public property involved or of the owner of private property involved to place or insert or cause to be placed or inserted in any manner whatsoever, any inscription, drawing, mark, and or graffiti on any street, sidewalk, alley, thoroughfare, public or private building, monument, fence, structure, vehicle, and or real or personal property of any type. And that is prosecuted as a misdemeanor under the Hamtramck Code, which would be punishable by a fine of up to $500 and a jail term not to exceed 90 days.
Can I jump in here? So on the previous page, 130.027 for graffiti. They go through and they talk about what constitutes a public nuisance, meaning any mark or marks on the surface or structure made without prior permission of the property owner. So as we move through the discussion on this, I want to make a point of saying that enforcement is really the key, the item that needs to be addressed at the end of the modification of the ordinance, because it won't have any teeth if we don't have the ability to apprehend the people. What typically happens, not that I noticed from personal experience, but tagging typically takes place late at night. It's an activity that's done very quickly. The people who do this it's a sport for them. And so they come out and they tag very quickly and they move through an area. If I could imagine the one part of the city that would stand out more than any would be Hamilton south of 6 Mile as it proceeded down to the border with the city of Detroit. There are a lot of buildings that have white faces that have been used as a canvas, but we really need to, in the future, have a conversation with public safety on ways to apprehend or at least identify the people that perpetrate these crimes. Ideally, it's not somebody from Highland Park. I can't imagine some teenager in Highland Park with all the blight they see, waking up at 1 a.m. saying, I'm going to spray paint the walls in my community. So I doubt very seriously it's people in our community. We might want to look at a partnership with the city where they put the, blue light or green light up, city-owned lights in areas where the property owner is amenable to it, to allow for proper enforcement, because it is a good idea to have accountability. In the city of Detroit, it's 48 hours. When they put the little orange sticker on your building, you got 48 hours to do something or the fines accrue. pretty aggressively, which is not good for most small business owners who would be in a situation where they would be renovating a building or be holding a building. So I think that would be incumbent upon us to ask for that type of support, because we can put teeth in this ordinance, but if we can't enforce it, we don't have the tools to enforce it. Also, in that section 130.027, it says graffiti constitutes a public nuisance. It means any mark or marks on any surface or structure made without the prior permission of the property owner, and made in a manner including but not limited to writing, inscribing, drawing, tagging, sketching, spray painting, painting, etching, scratching, carving, engraving, scraping, or attaching. Chalk marks on sidewalks are not graffiti and does not include any posting or posters. I think that section for us should also include graffiti does not include a mural, because we have had, and I'm sure we're going to have more murals erected in our city in the near future. So we want to make sure that the murals are not included in that.
I believe a few years ago, there was a gentleman who got charged with a number of graffiti violations in the city of Detroit. And I think he was artistic type of person. And I think he'd actually tagged a couple of buildings in Highland Park. And I think it might have been the Attorney General's office or the County Prosecutor's office went after him pretty hard on those charges. And I'm not sure. I never recall seeing what the result of that was. But I don't think he did any significant. I don't think he did a term of incarceration or anything like that. I'm not sure what happened in those criminal cases, but I know Detroit's I think just from reading the news, from watching the news, Detroit's talked about stepping up their enforcement on graffiti. I'm not sure what the tools they have in their toolbox, but this would just be a potential tool in the toolbox for the building department if this is something that council and the community feel they want us to work on and develop some sort of document for council consideration. And we're happy to do that, but these ordinances, like I indicated, they were pulled from the Hamtramck code just as a way to get the conversation going.
Okay. I think it's a great start. Better to have some sort of blueprint than the other thing that might need to be specified. Well, we don't know what the cost of removal will be, so we can't specify that. We can't specify that. Members of council, do you have comments about the ordinance? Yes, Madam Pro Tem.
Attorney Bosnick,
Yes.
CED Director Carlton Clyburn. Why did the graffiti ordinance get in front of the blight ordinance? Where are we with the blight ordinance?
I think there is a blight ordinance. But
You said there is a blight ordinance.
yes,
So we were supposed to be working on putting some teeth in that one, weren't we?
it's a process.
Everything's a process.
I haven't heard anything about it since.
Yeah, not one word.
Yes, sir. Hold on a second. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Patricia.
Council President, I think there's also another conversation that needs to be had. And I think that conversation, it needs to be had by this council in private with the police department in way of patrols. Because the graffiti that I'm seeing takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy. There's no way they're coming through in less than 10 seconds and putting that type of graffiti up. I mean, it's big artwork everywhere, and Woodward has been suffering. I've seen graffiti put on the top of the Albert Kahn building. Now, how did they get up there and do that and take the time that it takes to do that, and nobody saw it or caught it? I think also the discussion for patrols needs to be beefed up as well, along with this ordinance here. Because that's something that we're not seeing, you know what I'm saying? At night, I see nobody, okay? Unless they get a call, I see no police officers, I see no patrols, I see nothing. And that's kind of concerning to me, okay? Because this artwork takes time. And if it takes the amount of time, in which I'm pretty sure it does take, an officer should have caught that individual by now.
I agree. That's probably a conversation that we need to have with public safety and private. The issue is for those of us who don't work in the public safety sector that it's we know that we have a limited number of resources. We don't know what the ratio of resources are per 3 shifts. That's information that is not privy to us. It's closely guarded by all law enforcement agencies so that their capacity isn't affected. But I do think that that is a conversation we should have with public safety and private. And we should, while we do that, we should also take into consideration what is also going on at the same time frame that these nuisance crimes are occurring. The defacing of property is in fact, it's a nuisance crime. It's not harmless because it does have a negative impact on the people who have to experience it every day, but it is a nuisance crime that typically occurs in the wee hours of the morning, where in many cases, more serious crimes are likely to also be occurring, and they may have some impact on their ability to perform the patrols. But you're right, the conversation needs to be had.
Yeah, and then I'm concerned about this limit of 7 days or less to remove such graffiti. I don't want to put undue strain and undue pressure on the business owners. Okay, you know, removing this graffiti can be costly and expensive, especially if it keeps happening over and over. Okay, maybe we may want to look at giving the business owners a little bit more time than 7 days.
What do you think is reasonable?
Right, to possibly, I'm thinking 30 days.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I'm thinking 30 days.
tell me, let's announce the section, we'll change it.
Yeah. So in section C, says section C,
7 calendar days.
yeah.
So let's go to 30.
Yeah, and so we want to change that to 30 at least. I don't mind you giving your teeth, but the
Yes, ma'am.
conversation has got to be had.
I concur with that, and
Yeah.
because for 2 reasons. I see you, Ms. Manica. I'll acknowledge you next. Some of this activity, this tagging, is gang related, and so there's a back and forth that is likely, even if you paint it today,
Right.
the other faction of this tribal dispute will come and replace the tag, and that could be an ongoing issue for, I don't know, until whenever. And so that, I think that makes sense, 30 days.
You know, and the reason I say that is because our buildings get tagged as well. And it's unfair to insist that the business owners remove their graffiti in 7 days. And then we take, we take our dear little sweet time to remove the graffiti from the buildings that's owned by the city. It's kind of like, it's unfair almost.
Mhm.
Okay. And I'm pretty sure that there's a price that's been discussed for removing graffiti from city buildings, and I'm pretty sure that it's costly. Okay, so vice versa, it would be costly on the business owners as well too.
Mhm.
So more time would be greatly appreciated.
I guess, Councilman, through the president, would you want to keep the sentence in there where it indicates that they can contact the city to get an extension?
No, I just want to
So
give
you-
the extension automatic.
Oh, no, what I'm saying is like, right now, as it's written,
So-
there's 7 calendar days where they
Right.
can call if they need an extension. You
Right.
want to keep that extension language in with the
Okay.
30 days
I think we
also?
should.
Okay, so if it goes past the 30 days, then yeah,
Okay.
I'm very amenable to that. They can call for an extension and the city can decide if it's deemed,
Very well.
if it's necessary or not.
Thanks.
Okay, as long as some effort is being made.
Mhm.
And in that same conversation that we would have with public safety, I think that we should, if resources are available, if council approves the resources, for more of those blue, or I don't know what color light we're using in our city. Is it blue or is it green? What color is it?
It's blue, I believe.
It's
right?
okay. So we could, and I don't have the ability to ask this, but if there are city-owned properties that are vacant, maybe there's a possibility that we could definitely put those city cameras up on Hamilton we do have some facilities on the block that I'm thinking of the old DPW building where that area is tagged quite often. So it's just a thought.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
since-
Woodward's getting a little bit rough with graffiti. I mean, that Kentucky Fried Chicken didn't last more than a couple of months, I tell you, before they covered it in graffiti.
Mm. Yeah, that's an easy on and off spot too. Ma'am,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It is. It
I'm
is.
sorry. Ms.
And
Manica.
it's right
Very
off the
patient.
freeway, so it's easy to come in and get out.
Yeah, Ms. Manica, would you please?
So I don't necessarily have a problem with the 30 days, but is there an alternate? Because I'm believing, and I could be wrong, the press for the 7 days, and you can already ask for an extension. You already have 7 days. Then you already have the ability to ask for an extension even after the 7 days. We're gonna give them 30 and then turn around and say, here, you can have an extension. I think the teeth in this is because most of the tagging is being done to buildings that nothing is being done to. So it's putting some pressure on to do something to the building, because if you do something to the building, they'll stop tagging it.
Okay, but they're
But-
also tagging city buildings as well. though.
I understand that, but we're-
Ms.
we're still, wait, hold
Hold
on, I'll
on,
let
hold on,
you
Mr.
talk.
Shafi.
I'll let you
Hold
talk,
on.
Mr. Shafi.
When
So-
she finishes.
So in that being said, though, we're giving a lot of leeway to businesses, and we've been doing that quite a bit. And people own quite a bit of business, especially on Woodward, and they're just holding it. They're not trying to do anything with it. They're just holding it. And so I'm gonna give you 30 days and then you're gonna come for an extension, or I'm gonna give you 30 days to let it be up there and then you're gonna paint it. The object of the ordinance is to stop this from happening. So not only get the person that's doing the graffiti, but also get the person who owns the property to decide to do something with the building. We want them to do something with the building, or we need to find a way to take the building back.
So wait a minute,
sell it to
somebody
someone.
paints on, so we're punishing the victim. Somebody paints on your house, and so we're gonna.
No,
punish
we're
them.
not talking about my house.
No,
We're
I'm saying-
talking about
right.
how many buildings, if we were to go right now, how many buildings have been vacant for how long and been tagged for how long? Just think, go down Woodward. How
okay.
many buildings have been vacant for how long? They're just sitting on it. Now
got
you
you,
got
Mr.
some of them,
Shuffy.
they went from wanting 100,000 to wanting 1 million. Cause they think, oh, I'm gonna get this on it, but the object is you bought the building to do something with it. Either sell it or make your property. Either sell it or come up with what you decided to develop there, one or the other. No one has this thing that we're gonna wait forever. That's what's happening in all the other cities. They're not waiting forever for people to do their development. And then it's just getting run down. They're not doing that. They put a price on it, and either you're gonna fix it, or either you're going to keep paying for people tagging it. Evidently, you want them to keep tagging it. They haven't cared all this time. They have not cared all this time that it's been being tagged. So now we're gonna give them a grace period.
Okay.
That's my take on that, and that's why I think that's in here.
Go ahead, Mr. Shafi, please. And I'll make a comment after you.
So Ms. Manica, I get that. So how about we split the day in half then?
15,
No. How about we keep the 30, no extension, and then let's set the precedent. Let's see how fast the city removes the graffiti from its properties.
okay.
And then we can set that precedent for everybody else. It's unfair, it's unfair and unright of us to enforce or impose on the residents and business owners of this city, something that we ourselves are incapable of doing.
Okay, I hear you on that one.
Okay, it's kind of a double standard, okay? So how about this, Mr. Boston? We get rid of the extension, no extension, 30 days. I'm amenable to that, but we need to give time for people to come up with the monies to remove this graffiti and at least be reasonable with them, because I can tell you right now, something of the city gets spray painted, if they spray paint City Hall, it'll probably be about 2 weeks to 30 days before it get off the wall.
I agree with some of what Mr. Shafi said. I think the extension needs to remain, because here's the reality. 90%, I'm probably gonna go 95% of the property in the city of Highland Park is not owned by residents. So if you have a property that's owned by a resident, it's not probable or possible. It's likely that you're going to be able to reach them within the asserted time frame. They live within 2 miles of this building. So that's only five, let's say that's 5%. And I still think my numbers are high. 95% of the property owners in the city of Highland Park do not reside here. And let's say someone does live in Connecticut and you have to serve them notice of this ordinance violation, or their properties are owned through an LLC. How long does that process take before the fines begin to accrue? How long does it actually take before we are able to make contact with the actual owner? Many of these, as you said before, people who have purchased property who don't live here, they're just sitting and holding. We have large numbers of property in our city that are owned by venture capital. How does that look if we can't actually make contact with those people in less than 30 days? Again, if I know my number is high. Let's assume 5% of the property in the city of Highland Park, including houses, is owned by residents, actual residents. The other 95% of that property is owned by somebody outside of the city. And we have to make, if we're going to adjust this or create an ordinance around this, we have to make an allotment for adequate notification. Because as someone who owns property, just because an entity, a public entity says they sent you a document and it arrived at your house in the mail, doesn't mean that you had an opportunity to process it within a 7-day time frame. Even for jury duty, they give you what, 3 weeks for jury duty before you have to respond. So I think that the extension, I agree to your point, but I think that to make this fair to all property owners, including the city, that the 30 days is reasonable and that we should have an extension. Let's not forget, we're a small town.
Well, we are a small town and we can keep babying if we want to. We can keep on babying if we want to. We're gonna still be in the same situation because that's what we've done. We've put no punishment. We've done no teeth to anything. And then we keep saying, oh, well, let's just give them, a lot of cities don't give an extension. And then we're forgetting that E of this ordinance says if the graffiti remains on the property, which some cities do, then we will remove it and charge them. Same thing for cutting grass in certain cases. If we have to cut your grass, then we're gonna charge you. But we gotta stop letting our city look like this. When we stop letting our city look like this, then we won't have this problem. We keep babying people that don't live here. We keep giving people that don't live here chances, and I got people that live here that saying they don't get no chances at all. I had a call today. So I'm going to not give the people that live here a chance, but I'm gonna give the people who don't, no, they need, I guarantee you, they know what's going on with their property. So if nothing else, maybe we spend a week or two or something, making sure we have addresses for all these people who own property. And if there's no address there, then there has to be some kind of precaution, or that's probably not the word, some kind of, I don't want to call it punishment either for that, because how you own a property, and a lot of people do that too. They own property and then they sell it and nobody knows that it's been sold. It's been sold to someone else. So we need to do that. So maybe we can do that the first 2 weeks before this goes into effect, or first week before it goes into effect, figuring out who owned these properties. So let me, and seeing who has sold their property to their cousin. Wow. Or to their brother or to whoever, and changing the name to keep them from whatever, things they're going through. But we got to stop giving people who don't live here all these opportunities to continue to do it the way they're doing it. So let me put a pin in this, because the way that I had hoped this would go is that we introduce these things. So this obviously needs to be run through with the pen by all of us. Yeah. I think let's pause here on this. I'll say that this last bit and we'll move on to the other ordinance, which is a super priority. We have to be mindful that as legislators, if we make an ordinance that it cannot stand up in court, because as to Mr. Al-Shafi's point, it becomes unconstitutional for us to expect a double standard. And if we punch the property owners in the stomach, I'm just saying, we punch the property owners in the stomach because somebody came up and spray painted on their building. I don't really know how that could produce a positive end. I do think there should be teeth in the ordinance. I do think people should be responsible for their property, but I just want to make sure that as we craft this thing, we're not
punishing the victim, to Mr. Al-Shafi's point.
Okay,
So,
we do know, because it still has to go before our constituents as well.
yes, ma'am,
But
this
I'm
is just
tired
the
of being
first step.
punched in the stomach too. Every time I go down Woodward and look at the building that was down there, that used to be the old peep show. I'm tired of looking at all these buildings, the apartment buildings.
The real criminals are the
etc.
people that are painting. Those are the people who are committing the crime.
No, they're both criminals. If you've been had a building here
Go
for
ahead.
20 years and haven't did anything with it, then you a criminal too.
I've had one for 5 and
No.
I'm tens of thousands of
You
dollars
said
in the
5
hole.
years, I said 20.
No, I'm just saying,
On
I've had
Woodward?
one for 5 and I'm tens of thousands of dollars in the hole as a local property owner. It's not as easy as it looks. It's not, and investing in this city is challenging because securing funds to make improvements
Are
is
you
not.
trying to make something here though?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, they not though.
Yes, sir. Mr. Al-Shafi, go ahead.
Okay, so, to Ms. Manica's point about how people try to evade their responsibilities through various loopholes, why don't we simply close that loophole? How about we keep thorough records and keep track of every notification we send out, and if the property is sold, you know, just to avoid the responsibility, we close that loophole.
They do that in
We
Detroit.
get shorted down.
Yeah, I think the fines go with the property. Fines go with the property.
We start out at 30, the property keeps changing hands, you only got a couple of days, buddy. You know what I'm saying? Okay, we go from 30 to 2 weeks, to a week, to a couple of days.
That applies right now. That applies. You
We
can't,
close that loophole.
that applies. You can't, if you have liens on, if you have a stormwater runoff bill, you can't sell your building. If you have, in the city of Detroit, if you have violations, they go with the property, they go with the deed. So some of those things are already in place. It's just not, I mean, it's always been that way. You
So
can't.
we're just not enforcing them? Is that what we're saying?
Capacity. Again, and my point earlier was capacity. We don't have, it's a capacity issue. But look, let's take a pen and run it through this. Let's get to this thing on the rental properties. Let's, again, ladies and gentlemen, what I want to do is I want to open a discussion on this. And starting with these two, work little by little on the necessary modifications. So Mr. Boschick and his associates, who did this run through?
Mr. Contest.
Mr. Contis can also look at this. Now, we're all new, depending on how we do this. This is not, these two ordinances now, 2 more ordinances later in a year, 2 more ordinances after that, and so on. So,
Council President?
Yes, sir.
Is what I'm looking at already been adjusted? I'm seeing red here.
I think this is it's ordinance number 2025XX. This is its first iteration. It's not a real thing yet. This is what we're working on.
Okay.
So the recommendation here is to get rid of the existing ordinance and to replace it with a version of the document that we have in front of us. Am I correct?
So just real quick, so what you have there is something that was drafted by the building department based off other ordinances. And we took it to the legal department for them to look at that version of it. Nothing is live in the legal department. That's what you see, the red and the highlights. And so those are all discussionary points. So the building department want to discuss, those are the things that's been pulled out because the ordinance that we have on the books, I believe is from 1980. And it's about 3 pages, so it's missing so much. So this was a bigger version from that that's already internally being looked at that now needs to come to council for your input because of everything that's going on. But I would like to say before we pass to the building department is that there's 2 pieces to this ordinance. We're getting a lot of compliance on the real renters. So now we're improving the quality of life of people that are renting in Highland Park by forcing these inspections and forcing these renters to follow the ordinance. So I know the biggest hang up, which we're going to discuss, and I know going to be the biggest thing is the affidavit with the family. What's considered family, what's not when you're talking about rental, because I know that's the biggest issue that we've been hearing. And even before the council did the moratorium, we had talked about shutting that piece of it down and just enforcing the real renters while we figure out how do we determine what the family members are and that affidavit looks like. So Sam is going to discuss this.
Carlton, yeah, I'll make it work.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Woodrick, Director of Building Services at McKenna. I apologize, I'm not in my finest form tonight. I'm having a gout attack, so and a little bit of pain, but I'm very happy to be here with you guys. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on something Carlton mentioned, which is, the point of these rental ordinances are to make you all, the legislators, allies with the people in your city, the people who rent. I don't know if you've ever had a bad landlord before, but when you do, it's very hard as a resident to get them to comply, to get them to fix things, to get them to make sure that you're living in a habitable situation. But this ordinance is another tool that the city can use to make sure that that happens and to improve the quality of the housing stock in your city, to make sure that, it has a positive trend going into the future as far as what it's worth, the quality, in compliance with their National Property Maintenance Code. I'll tell you, and also as Carlton mentioned, the irony of all this is that we were actually preparing to come to council to discuss some of these issues that came up. The most glaring one is the family exemption from the rental ordinance. It's unusual that your rental ordinance doesn't have one. In most communities, there is some degree of exemption for immediate family members. In the building department, we can only enforce your ordinances as they're written. So that is why up until now, or until you place the moratorium on enforcement, that there hadn't been any exemption because it's not written in the ordinance. I do think it's a very good idea to have one. And I think that's reflected in some of the changes that are in this new version that you all have. The question is, what is a family member, right? Most municipalities choose to define it as, nuclear family members, mothers, fathers, children, sisters, brothers, sometimes grandparents. The question is, what about your second cousin 3 times removed? Yeah, exactly. That's where it gets a little sticky. So our recommendation would be to keep it to a closer, immediate family members. Yeah. The other thing is that, it's also very difficult to demonstrate that that person is your second cousin 3 times removed by marriage or whatever, right? Whereas if it's, a father, mother, something like that, there's something as simple as a birth certificate, checking that people have the same last names, that the address is on their driver's license, stuff like that, and signing the affidavit saying that, yes, this person is my immediate family member. So we're exempt from getting the inspections, paying the fees, things like that. So that would be our recommendation. There was also the legal department added, or I believe it was them that added a cap on the number of properties that could be exempt under this ordinance. I believe it's 3. So you could be housing 3 family members at any given time. Once again, it would be a peculiar situation for someone to own 10 properties in the city and have 10 different immediate family members living there. I suppose it's possible, but
It's very possible.
It's very possible.
yeah,
It's very possible. It's very possible.
Because with me and council president, yeah, that's very possible.
It's very possible.
okay.
Very possible.
Yeah, well, that's definitely something that can be discussed. What should that cap look like? What's the thought behind having it in there, and how is that going to be approached?
And let me address my council members here, and I want you to consider something too. There's a book called the Color of Money. It's about redlining. Okay, if you haven't read the book, you should go read it. It's when we get it on Audible, and you should listen to it. It is it's a master class in family disintegration, if you think about it. Because my parents grew up in Black Bottom. It was a neighborhood that stretched through where the freeway is right now, east of 75. And the community was so strong because there was people lived together, multi-generational, because they came north. But as they grew as a family, most home ownership came by way of either will or decree you got a house from your great aunt who didn't have any kids. They stayed in the family. And so for us here today, again, I talked about our historic situation as we represent the actual demographic of the city, the five of us sitting here. So we should be thinking about those of us who have had concerns about the prospect of gentrification, cultural gentrification, not racial, because our community is diverse, but cultural gentrification, where the historic residents of Highland Park are permanently displaced because their descendants either cannot afford to buy houses here now or don't have an opportunity to. So we need to consider that we might be empowering the last generation of Highland Park High School graduates to use their land resources and give it to their children. So and we need to set that up now, because as a community, we don't pass property well because we've had adversarial situations and we just are not as aware of some other communities. So I think we should work real hard to make this thing look like us.
Yeah, I think everybody's well aware that even though redlining is now illegal, there's still a very strong history. It has a legacy, not just in Highland Park, but across the entire country. So
yeah,
It may be illegal, but it's still being done.
it's still being done. Yeah. And I would like to see, I mean, the community is going to grow and the community is going to look like the people like Sesame Street. These are the people in your neighborhood, and it's going to continue to grow. It was never predominantly anything. The east side was Lebanese, the whole other side of the tracks were black people, white people interspersed. That's not, it's the remaining culture of the people who lived in Highland Park. That culture, if you go back and look at some of the yearbooks, they look like a Benetton commercial. They look like the United Nations, because that's what the community used to look like. But the legacy of those people, my councilwoman right here, who I'm about to acknowledge raising her hand, she's one of them, that where she lived next door to her mama. So I'm telling you this. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
How does this reflect for people who have properties under LLC?
So generally speaking, the way you identify rental properties in any community is whether or not they have a PRE, a principal residency exemption. Old time speak for it's a homestead exemption, right? So that means that you can have a percentage of the property if there are multiple people living in it, but you pay a lower tax rate on your principal residency. So that's usually how we identify rental properties. And in the state of Michigan, LLCs are not eligible to place a PRE on any property. So you can't buy it with a company and say, oh yes, that's my private personal residence, my primary residence. So as generally speaking, any property that's owned by an LLC, corporation of any sort, has to be registered as a non-owner occupied property.
So they wouldn't be able to use an affidavit. So
I
what
see,
I was
Mr.
saying
Shelby.
was, say that I have more than one home,
Mhm.
but I have an LLC is the title of, the owner of the home, but
Right.
it's mine. I have my own principal residence, but I have my son in this house and my daughter in the other house, or, you get what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Does not fall under this because it's under a LLC. Does all of them have to be in those persons' name?
No, they could all be in your name.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
They
they
all have to be in one person's name.
yes, or if your daughter or son or whoever, if their name was on the property as well, well, actually, in that situation, they would be able to take a PRE
Right.
on the property. But as it stands now, no, those would not fall under the exemption, but that's something
Okay.
that could be addressed.
No, I just wanted to make sure because it seemed like they wouldn't, but in some cases, we know that people own more than one home.
Mhm,
And
sure.
instead of using their name, they have the other 2 or 3 under an LLC. And so they may have a family member in those homes.
Mhm.
And so.
On
then they
paper,
said-
it looks like a rental property, but because it's under an LLC,
Yes.
but you're saying it's not really.
So will that be included in this?
Yep, I see, Mr.
affidavit
Shaw.
or not?
It would
It
not,
would not be, right? It
as
would
of
not
now,
be.
no.
Okay.
Mr. Shopping?
I'm wondering, this is Martin first.
Go ahead, Ms. Martin.
I have a few things. So right now, this is just a rough draft, correct?
Correct, yep.
Okay, and so I noticed that, like on page, hold on, first off, this is page 2.
No, ma'am, I believe that's the first page. The one
It
with the
says two.
ordinance number on top is the first page.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there's not a page missing.
Yeah.
Okay, so on page 3, where it says under, furnace report,
Yes,
it says that to have a registered and a subsequent report provided annually.
correct.
Why would we do annually? Can we change that to every 5 years unless there's been changes to the dwelling? Or unless the unit has changed hands and ownership?
I would not recommend that. In all honesty, the furnace report is one of the most important life safety items done in a rental inspection. It's to ensure that your heat exchanger isn't cracked and it's not at risk of putting carbon monoxide into the home. Once again, anything is possible. You can look at changing that term. I wouldn't recommend it being 5 years. That I would say that poses a risk for the people living in that property. 5 years is a long time for a
I
furnace.
agree with that.
Yeah, but you're saying that it could crack. You got a new furnace, you got a person who's rental, they're buying a rental.
I don't mean to interrupt you. Generally speaking, if you have replaced the furnace and there's a permit for it within the previous year, you were generally exempt from that.
Okay,
Please
so I
continue.
don't see where it says that though, where it says that you're
That's
exempt if your
okay.
furnace is new.
Yeah, it's not in the ordinance. That's just the general
Can we
practice.
add that in the language then?
Sure can.
Can we add that, that you get the rental property, your furnace is new, then you don't have to do it and you don't have to do it annually. You can do it every 5 years.
Well, no, that's not what I was saying. What I'm saying is if you have replaced it within the previous year, then you're exempt for that certificate. But then going forward, you will need to continue to
So
replace
how
it.
often would you say a new furnace would crack if it's brand new?
Generally, you would hope that it would last quite a while, but things happen. The furnaces do break even when they're relatively new. And once again, it poses, because it's a gas burning appliance, it poses a pretty significant risk of carbon monoxide.
Wouldn't, but then couldn't they do a warranty and just get it fixed or replaced?
Well,
I mean, because you just bought a furnace.
right.
Hold on, I mean, I've had a house before, I've had more than one. I brought a brand new furnace and I had a warranty on that if it broke within that year or 2, they would replace my furnace. Because that's a big expense to sit up there, buy a brand new furnace, and then it breaks again the next year. That's a whole problem, or maybe it wasn't installed correctly.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I think if you were a landlord, you'd probably be a good landlord.
Me?
Yeah, if you were a landlord, but I think the provision that he's looking for is that at least once a year, if you have, just imagine a mother and 2 or 3 kids living in a house with a landlord who lives in Connecticut, and they're not coming here to look after the property. Our basements sometimes flood. Our houses are 100 years old. I would want to hold that property owner, that corporate property owner, responsible for at least once a year. And the city charges a fee to the property owner for that inspection to at least come and check those people's equipment out, because I just think it happens. Most people don't really know their way around a furnace.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Mr. President. Okay. You own more than one property, correct?
I do.
Okay, so my question to you is, first, how many times has that furnace that you have in those properties broke?
Can
Hold
I?
on, wait a minute, hold on.
Okay. In my house,
At your house,
3 times.
not just the one you live in, the one that you are a what is it, a non-owner
Non-resident.
occupied.
It doesn't have a furnace in it. It had one.
Has a furnace.
No, you had one, but because it was vacant, somebody decided they wanted to take it, so it doesn't have.
Take your furnace.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
but then okay, so then that goes back to what I was initially saying. If you buy you would have to buy a new furnace.
Yes.
And then you're saying that we're going to inspect it.
If I was going to
That's
rent
a
it to someone.
charge. That's a charge to the owner.
Not the first year,
Yeah. But if I was gonna rent it,
Annual charge.
but
Yeah.
it's not the first
I
year.
didn't
Nothing.
say first year. Is this?
she's correct.
Is
It is
it
an
annual
annual
char-
charge. It's a
Okay,
once
that's
a
all
year
I'm saying.
charge. Yes.
I'm not talking about first, meaning as long as you have it, you have that furnace, that property every year you're being charged for that inspection.
Yes.
I think it's fair because the tenant, 12 months out of the year, the tenant is going to remit a monthly rent. And there's a thing called carrying costs. When you own property, there's a embedded cost that you have to spend to maintain it. You have to pay your taxes. You have to pay for repairs. You have to make sure that the roof. So that's part of the carrying cost. In return, your tenant provides you with a monthly remittance. In Highland Park, it's anywhere from $800 to $1,500 a month. If that fee is $100 once a year, and that tenant has, however hard they work, paid that rent every month for 12 months at $1,500, I think the property owner who's getting the benefit of all of that rent for all that work that tenant is doing, they should pay the one-time fee. I think it's reasonable. I think if it's
The
$100
one-time fee annual.
annually, yes, I do, because in the city of Detroit, there are fees attached to, because the person that is, we're talking about people who are making money off providing lodging for citizens who live here. So they're making money off people that they work at Target, they work at the plant, they work at the post office, and they're paying their rent on time to stay in Highland Park for all the reasons we want to be here. Their landlord should be willing to ensure a safety inspection for their furnace because it's our city. What if the house blows up? I seen them on the news this past 3-4 months. We've seen 2 in Wayne, one in the Warren.
Okay, but then there's also property insurance that you have.
And that's insurance
if-
after the
if-
fact.
If you, right.
That's insurance if
Well, I
it
mean,
blows
but
up.
It's always insurance after the fact. That's what insurance is.
I think I used to have to get my car tested for emissions. They don't
Me
do that
too.
anymore. So every year they wanted to make sure that I wasn't
Right.
adding my extra share of carbon monoxide, carbon
Right.
dioxide to the
Whatever.
atmosphere.
Right,
And it was a fee. If you wanted to drive,
right.
you had to pay that fee.
Right.
And I thought it was silly until I found out the impact of air pollution. So now, to his point, more often than not, we'll have people who are property owners who might not be willing to provide the proper support that they need for their tenants. And it happens in Highland Park. We do have some slumlords here. We do. Sadly, we got some
So,
slumlords.
so my next question, I don't agree with that, but we're gonna agree to disagree. My next question is, once let's say that house changed hands and it's within the 6 months of that year, does that inspection transfer to the new owner?
So can I touch back on the furnace thing for just one
Go ahead.
second? I know we're really going in
Go
it,
ahead.
but
That's great.
so-
First of many.
this inspection, 2 things. One, this is done by a licensed mechanical contractor, so this is not a fee that the city collects. People are welcome to shop around as much as they need, get any mechanical contractor to come.
DTE does it.
Right, exactly. And the second thing is that this is not ensuring that the furnace is working. It's ensuring that it's not emitting carbon monoxide, which usually happens even when the furnace is completely functional. So unless you do this test, you have no idea. Everything can seem fine. The furnace is still producing heat, is working really well, but it can be spewing out carbon monoxide. So it's not just whether or not it's broken. And so that's what the test is for.
Okay, so my next question is,
Okay.
so now I have 2 questions. The first one is, like I said, does that then, the ownership transfers at 6 months? Does that inspection then transfer to the new owner?
Are you talking about the furnace inspection?
Correct. That somebody else brought the property. But
Right.
The original owner has already got the inspection done within that year.
Correct. Yeah. So generally, I believe as the ordinance stands right now, when there is a transfer of the property, the certificate does not transfer. So
Not
you need
the
to go.
inspection. We're talking about the inspection. I thought the certificate and inspection are 2 different things in this ordinance.
Are you referring to the furnace inspection or the property
Furnace.
inspection?
The furnace inspection. right?
So everything there, you would need to start from scratch, basically, if the property is transferred.
Why would you need to start from scratch?
Well, that's how the ordinance is written now, but
You need to amend that then.
So yeah,
Okay.
this is just a rough. So Mr. Al-Shafi has been patient.
Oh, just one more second. I'm sorry. Generally speaking, there is most municipalities in their ordinance, they say that when a property transfer takes place, you have a certain amount of time. Usually it's 3 weeks after you file the PTA. And if you file your PTA, come into the building department, then you can resume the previous certificate and it's good for the duration of that
That's the
certificate.
Not the inspection.
Well, you would have both,
Cool. I
right?
got that.
Yeah. So you would not be required to inspect the furnace, inspect the property, or anything until that previous certificate expires. So you would basically
Okay.
have the same certificate the previous owner had, as long as you come in within a certain amount of time from the
All right.
transfer.
And can we add grandparents and grandkids?
That's,
Okay.
it's, anything is
In
possible.
the immediate family.
Yeah, this is just the first, Ms. Martin, this is, just the first, but this one and the graffiti one, I'm sorry, when you were out for a second. This is our day one. I want everybody to get their pen out and start to mark this one up. Yes,
Are
we
you saying
need,
we're gonna have another workshop?
we definitely on these two. We're gonna have another workshop on both of these. This is our warm up here. And Mr. El Shafi's been very patient. I want to get to Mr. El Shafi and also
Okay,
Madam Pro Tem before we close the meeting out and take a 5 minute before we go on to our regular scheduled meeting.
okay. What's your name again?
Sam Woodrick.
Okay, it's nice of you being able to come and actually speak to us, Sam. I'm glad you got permission to do so.
Happy to do it.
Here's my concern. The way that the ordinance currently is, one of the main reasons that we put the moratorium on the current ordinance is I received numerous complaints. I mean, numerous complaints about this ordinance, okay? So my problem with it is simple, and I'm going to use me as an example. So I gave my son a house that's next door to me. The house I'm currently living in, I gave it to my niece, okay, because she needed a place to stay. Both properties are in my name. Now, the only reason that nobody says anything to me is because I'm city council. You know,
We just haven't gotten to you yet,
Okay.
sir.
you know, so, okay.
Yeah.
So the problem is, it was a lady here who said that she was forced to declare her property a rental property, even though it wasn't a rental property. She wasn't receiving any rent for it. Her daughter lived in it. Her daughter lived in it, and she was still forced to declare the rental property and pay these enormous fees. And they gave her 30 days to bring the property up to Section 8 inspection. Hold on a second.
Sure.
I'm telling you what was told to her. Okay. Now, for most residents here, the Section 8 level of inspection can be quite pricey, especially for a city that's barely getting by as it is. Okay. Our water bills are exorbitant. DTE is draining everybody in the city. Okay. The property taxes have gone up. Everything is up. And now on top of that, she's being forced to declare property as a rental property that's not a rental property, that she's not receiving that she's not receiving any rent for whatsoever. And then to add insult to injury, I'm being told by residents that your people are being quite nasty in the office towards them. That's my problem. You know, you come here to the city of Highland Park, and I'm speaking directly to the people that work in the office. When you speak to the residents of Highland Park, you need to have kid gloves on. We don't take abuse. We don't take insult and injury. We don't tolerate it here. Now, other communities may tolerate it because they're so much bigger, but this is a tight-knit community here. Everybody knows everybody.
Forgive the interruption. Duly noted, Mr. Ashafi. I want to allow Madam Pro Tem to have a question.
Okay, no, I'm.
Forgive me for interrupting you. We're at 7. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just know because of time, I wanted to make sure
Okay.
Madam Pro Tem
So,
had an
yeah,
opportunity.
People being forced to declare their property as a rental property that's not a rental property that they have family and relatives living in is unacceptable. That is a section that needs to be removed from this ordinance. It needs to be removed.
Added to, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Pro Tem, you close us out?
Answer that question.
I know, but I can if
Yeah.
you'd like.
Okay,
Yeah.
then that'll close us out.
So to start, you know, I firstly want to say there is never going to be a rental ordinance that you as a council are not going to receive complaints about. There's going to be issues with this, usually from landlords, but from all sorts of people are going to have certain issues with it, right? So that needs to be understood. You need to weigh the pros and cons of it. You need to recognize the value that it brings to your community in holding landlords accountable, in keeping your housing stock well taken care of, while also weighing the imposition that it is, because people do have to do things to comply with the ordinance. It's not Section 8, it's the International Property Maintenance Code, which council has adopted and is applied to the entire city. Some people might.
I know we run out of time, so I just want you to answer the question because you are not. Do we have to register our homes if our family is living in it as a rental unit, whether we are receiving compensation or not? Yes or no, that's all.
Yeah, as the ordinance is written now, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring the workshop to a close. Before we actually close out the meeting, I just want to remind the members of the council that this was an introduction to these two ordinances to work on. I want to thank you so much for joining us here, Sam. We're going to have to, chew this thing up and get it to where it's acceptable for most people.
Yes.
This is our first time of modifying an ordinance, so we're going to go at the speed of our capability. So if you will be willing to join us probably here next month. So I'm expecting, we have another meeting on the 16th. I don't know if I'll be able to host a workshop on this topic, but I think that 30 days, we should have an opportunity. We can discuss this among ourselves and even at the next council meeting. Well, I'll let you know when we would need you to come.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to attend the next workshop. And in the interim, if you have any questions about specifics that you'd like me to answer, if you can send it to Carlton and the mayor's office, they will forward it on to me and I will get a response to you.
All right, thank you so much, sir. It is 7:03
You're very
and we'll
welcome.
call the workshop meeting adjourned. We're gonna take 5 minutes, council, and then we'll get started with our regular meeting.
Yeah. Are you all right? Are you stressing?